If I can have you guys' attention so we can get started, because I know Malene is dying to get us on the field. All right, so basically for tonight, it's a little bit different. We normally are on the field, and I understand the attraction of going to the field and doing a session. And I don't knock any of the sessions that we've done. I think all of them were fantastic. But at the same time, I think there's a part of the game that we sometimes seem to overlook a little bit. And that's what I want to kind of address tonight, because I think it's equally as important, the kind of the middle aspect of what we do in our practices. I think it's just as important at times that we set intentionally goals in practice for your team bonding, to acquire that relationship with your players. It's just as important as if you get the best X's and O's practice, tactically, technically, and all of those, the information that I think we give out on a very good basis. For example, last time I was here, unfortunately I missed Kieran's, Brian was up and he did a tactical session and using the polls and what have you. So I did exactly what he did, and it didn't work at all the first time I did it. So the polls, we ran into.
Again for you?
Yeah, it might help. The kids ran into the poles. The balls always seemed to hit the poles. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. So as coaches, we have to revise and adjust. So then I changed it. All right, we're going to go to cones. God, this is going to make it so much easier. Next day out, both of my teams. Never saw so many kids hit cones in my life. All we would do is hit the cones, trip over the cones, still wasn't working. So you have to adapt, you have to change. And the next time out, I said, screw all this, no cones, no poles. We're just going to use the blue lines on the field, that beautiful blue circle that Caleb and those guys usually maintain on those fields. I utilized that, and it was one of the best practices we had. And I was able to take the information that Brian provided for us, and I thought it really helped in our game plans for the next couple of games. So those things are important, and I think they're huge. If we can't do the simple things, the X's and the O's, and we can't get that information across, we're not going to be successful on the field. But at the same time, the other things are just important, the mental aspect of it, and that's what I kind of get at today. Unbeknownst to me, this was not TS's quote, and I'll read it real briefly right here because I don't want to screw it up. I did have this all on a PowerPoint that my daughter did for me, just to let you know, because I'm not good at PowerPoint or computers, and it was cool graphics and stuff, but my computer went down, so I had no access. And Stanley can attest to it.
Just read the quote out.
He probably could, but it's actually not his quote. I thought he did it. So the quote is, and pardon me, I have to use glasses whenever I read them. So a coach will impact, maybe you've heard this, will impact more young people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime. And in very small print at the very bottom, even with my glasses, I could barely, it was not by TS, which I thought was TS Nimble. It was actually by Billy Graham. So, which I think is very important to understand. And it really hit home because I was actually recently in the grocery store, ran into one of my ex-players' parents, and they were just talking about that whole situation, about how much an impact the coach had. They actually weren't talking about me, but another coach that they currently had was having actually on that child. And I thought it was awesome to hear that. And for me personally, I can't really recall many of the teachers that I had, maybe because I didn't pay attention as much as I should have in class, but I can recall every single coach that I had growing up, every single one of them, to a T. And I can tell you about them, I can tell you what they did right, I can usually tell you what they did wrong from hindsight looking back. And I think it's so important for us to understand that we have an impact on those kids' lives for the good and sometimes for the bad. And so it's so important for us to understand that every time we step out on the field, we're impacting them, and we want to make sure we impact them the right way. I think it's really important to understand that when we're out there, because we have a huge responsibility and role. Coaching is incredibly challenging. It's extremely hard, and I don't think anyone here gets paid nearly enough for some of the things that we have to deal with, especially off the field when it comes to some of the parents and what have you. So for me, one second, I gotta use my notes because I don't have my cool little computer up there. A couple things that I think about why coaching to me, and it's so hard and yet so rewarding, is one of the big things for me is on Burbank when I drive in, it used to be always prominent right there on the side of the road. Maybe you saw it one time, maybe you didn't. And it was a sign that said, here today, gone tomorrow, and had this lady on it, nice glasses and everything, I can kind of reflect on that a little bit more now that I have glasses I have to wear all the time to read. And it always hit home when I drove by, and it really struck me when I'm going to practice how important that is to take every day as it might be your last, and at the same time how important it is to get across what you can to the kids. It's no longer on the side of the road. It's actually in the thrift store that I went to recently for Midnight Madness. It's a really cool thrift store, by the way. $10 bought my whole outfit for Midnight Madness. But it's right there still if you see it, if you want to go to that store. The second thing for me that always hits home that helps me when it comes to coaching and everything is whenever we, and I know a lot of people hate this, is when we reschedule and we move to Indy. I'm usually a proponent to going to Indy because that's where I actually grew up playing soccer. So it kind of is neat, nostalgic for me when I get to go back, practice, I should say coach on the same fields that I practiced on growing up and playing soccer in. So I think that's pretty cool stuff. There's 4 things with these cute little index cards that I gave you that we're going to give you to write down these questions. And before I really get in a little bit more involved in that, I did this in 2017. I look back at my notes, and Brian loves the fact that I take notes. And he always laments that, so if we're in the Zoom, I'm going to be the one that he always sometimes used to call and ask what were the notes in that. So in 2017, I thought it was very interesting. I look back at my notes when I did this meeting. We had, in our club at the time, and I'm not sure exactly what the count is, if you count like all of our staff, we had about 42 total. I might be off here or there. And this is why I think coaching is so hard and so challenging. Anybody fair to guess, of those 42, how many are still remaining? And this counts the people that are in the office currently. Just a crazy guess, how many of those 42 are still with us? 13. Marvin. 13's not bad. That's pretty good. He's definitely one of them. 13's close. Anyone else?
15.
15. You're getting really close.
17.
So close. One off.
18.
18.
Oh.
18 people. I mean,
First try.
I mean, it's amazing to me that there's 18 of us still left. Now, some of us here weren't here then. So, and I went through and I took notes on the people at that time. Because believe it or not, I used to coach professional soccer, then I came back and I was like, man, I'm just going to jot down some things for the guys and the girls that were here at the time when I started to come back. So a couple things. And this was from May 2017. So I'm going to read basically verbatim for what I had. All right. At the time, first on the list was this girl named Angie. Compassionate. She was a nurturer, comforts and good communicator, and excellent with the players and the parents. I had Kieran, who I just recently met. And by the way, mind you, when I just recently met Kieran, a little side note, he had just tore my ass apart at the PPP. He really lit into me. He did not like me at all. And my things that I wrote down for him was focused, driven, and very detailed oriented. I think it's pretty interesting because he just got his A, so he was definitely very driven. And by the way, congratulations on getting it. Yes, great for the class. Jennifer, who's not here, I put down for her, she was fun, compassionate, and the girls are really drawn to her. And if you know anything about Jennifer, she's excellent at recruiting players, and that's one of her key aspects. Roger, who's not here, always seems to have a plan, very involved with the game. He likes to follow his players after they leave him, especially from whatever endeavors they have. And then, ironically, he posts today in our thing about some girls and what they're going to be doing and playing in college. So I thought that was kind of appropriate. Let's see here. TS actually has.
What did he say?
I'm sorry?
Okay.
That's where that was Roger.
I thought it was a lie.
So what I wrote for No, I do have Roger down if you want me to. I can't read the other Rogers. All right, so for TS, I wrote very passionate, always has a message of faith to get across. Would really like one day for my girls to actually play for him. Now, they haven't had the opportunity to play for him. It doesn't seem like they will, but fortunately, they get to go to his FCA camp in the summer, which I will say I would recommend for all of you that have kids in the teenager area or coach kids in the teenager area. Let's see here. Adrian, who's not here, it was very short because I just met him. Very fun-loving guy, really nice. Let's see here. It's a little risky.
Your Tinder profile.
I guess it's really not fair. So my sister's not even
Let's hear
here.
Marvin's one.
I'll get into it. I put down for Melissa, passionate, detail-oriented to a fault, very emotional, and the most competitive coach I know. I had Caleb down here. Young, energetic, eager, lots of potential, and very involved. And as we know, he's involved in pretty much every aspect of the club at times. Marvin, the best trainer I've ever known or seen. And I think if you were here at the time, I lamented about the fact that when I used to go to coaching courses way back in the day when you didn't have to do anything that Kieran has to do now, where you went for basically 10 days, you're sequestered in some dorms. And Marvin was one of those guys where you went out there and when he's doing his session, pretty much everybody stopped on point and we all kind of leaned that way and watched his sessions because they were so good. So that was definitely something that's always stuck with me. Let's see if anyone else has got here. Kevin, I didn't realize at the time, I had you down as young. I guess I didn't realize how old you were. Ambitious, and as a really good rep with his, as far as coach. Let's see here. Stanley, sorry, I just didn't met you. Great personality. That's all I'll say. Let's see here. I have down for, these are still the guys that are here, not here now, but over at the club, currently still. Carranza, solid, doesn't seem to back down to anyone, has established principles and is very strong-willed. Colin, I had down as very friendly, has a love for the game and a hard worker. Paul, I wish he was here, great guy, one of the best communicators I know, very detailed and very organized, as we all know. Mateus, I had down as has a great ability to influence, and the guys will follow him. For me, I mean, this is for me emotionally, I guess I would say is if I was to go back in time and get to play again, the coach, to me, and this is what I wrote beside that, is want to play for more than anything would be Mateus. That guy, when I am next to his field, I've had very numerous times to be next to his field, the emotion that comes across in his practices, and hell, if you walk by the game, you know he's coaching, that to me is inspiring. So as a player, I would have loved him under his tutelage. Let's see who else I got left. Hannah, if you've ever met Hannah, she's in the office, has a very, very important role. I put down she's very personable, detail-oriented, very quiet but effective, and she gets her job done. And Santana, who is unfortunately not here, excellent to have a friendly trainer on staff that knows the game. She's very engaging and super friendly. So that's kind of, I had a couple notes, and I just want to share that as I continue to go forward. Hopefully I'm not taking too much time away from these activity days. So, leads me to the questions, okay? All right, so the first and foremost question for me, for you guys to have an opportunity to write down on your card, and you can answer it now or later, is why do you coach? So take the time, it's not very long. Why do you coach? Maybe you've heard these questions before, maybe you haven't. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is exactly what is, a coach. So, and if you think about the definition a little bit, it's it's used basically a vehicle to take someone from where they are to where they want to be. So as coaches, that's pretty much our job. We have these kids there, and they have these aspirations, they have these dreams, and some of them are big, and some of them are lofty, and some of them are completely out of place at times, you feel. But at the same time, they have those dreams. And if you think back and reflect on when you were a kid, and if you did play the sport, and you had some of those type of dreams. So it's important for us to kind of relate to those kids and try to figure out a way that we can help them achieve what they want to be. And it could be playing in high school, it could be playing in college, it could be going from maroon to red to black, whatever that happens to be. So I think it's pretty important. Each of you in here has a story, and they have a story about why they coach. And I think it's important for us also to know a little bit about everybody else and why they coach. So again, I know, try not to monopolize the conversation, but for me, a little bit of background about myself to understand maybe the whys around why I coach. I'm from, if you didn't know this already, I'm from Baton Rouge. I grew up here. I played for the Baton Rouge Soccer Association, and I also had the opportunity to play at Baton Rouge High, and I was very fortunate to get a scholarship to go to Butler University. Through that whole transition of all those different levels of play that I was able to accomplish, never once did I want to coach, ever. I always swore, everyone would ask me, I said, no, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. I had no desire. In college, I had no idea what my major should be, just picked the group I was running with was doing. It was marketing, no offense to Trent, but it didn't work out for me. So at the end, I had a internship, and my boss at the end basically had a little soccer team that he was running for his 8-year-old son. And in order for me to pass my internship, get my final grade so I could graduate, he basically said, you're gonna have to come to my practice, I need you there. And I didn't want to do it. He said, well, I'm gonna hold your check, you gotta go. So I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I remember calling my parents, not via cell phone, on the landline, and didn't want to do it. So I went, and the craziest thing ever happened. At that practice, by the end of that practice, I knew exactly then what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, from that point forward. Got home, called my parents, and said, I do know what I want for my graduation gift. I want to go to a C license course, because at the time, if you were in college, you jumped straight to your C. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's how it started. It was something I never wanted to do. I couldn't believe that I wanted to do it. At the same time I was there, I became offered a club coach spot and a high school spot at the same time. So they kind of did two conjoined. And believe it or not, 1993 is when I graduated. So in 93, I started coaching club soccer and high school soccer at the end of that summer. And that's how I got started. So all of you guys have your stories as to why you started coaching, and I think it's important for you to think about it, reflect upon it, and use that towards your reason why you coach. The next question that I have down is, why do you coach the way you do? So for me, and for a lot of you, it's the influences that you come upon. So like I said earlier, I can't remember many of my teachers, but I remember all of my coaches. And for me, the most important coach that I had throughout my youth was a guy named John Knighton, who coached in the club. And not only at one time was he my club coach, he was also my ODP coach, and he was also my high school coach. So I had a little bit of a connection with him. And I'm sure all of you have had connections with your coaches. And there's certain things that your coaches, good or bad, imparted upon you. And that, I think, why you coach the way you coach, it kind of comes through you, the way your coach treated you. And like I said, for good or bad. The good thing was, with Mr. Knighton is that one of the biggest things that he imparted upon me was the fact that to give back. He always thought it was very important that whatever you do in life, you give it back. So whatever you learn and you can do for others, try to do that in kind. So that's kind of part of my theme why I coach, is the fact that when I was growing up, I was always parent coaches, and we never had a full-time staff coach for the Baton Rouge Soccer Association until I was a senior in 1998. And that was it. And it was only for that spring. That was it. That was the first one. Gary Williamson. And he's currently director of some kind, North Texas. He was not official. So that's when he came in. So my senior year in that spring. And that was the only time I ever got to work with a professional or have a tutelage under a professional coach. But all of them before that was always dad coaches. But I still think that I was fortunate to have some really good coaches. So that's a good question for you guys to ask yourselves in regards to why you coach the way you coach. And I think a lot of it has to do with who coached you when you were growing up, and if you were in college as well. Next question is, what is it like to be coached by you? And this is a tough one. And the easiest way I can say for you to go about answering this question is to ask a player that you've coached before. And for the most part, you'll get that answer. So that's the short of that. I don't really need to think, you can really go much further than that. If anyone else wants to expound on it, that's fine by me, but I think that's the beauty of it. If you find a coach or a kid or a girl that's played for you before and ask them, I think you'll really get to the nuts and bolts of it. Fortunately for me, and I'll get to that a little bit later, I have quite a few of those guys that are in the club right now that I used to coach. Caleb, Thomas Kobetz, who's around here somewhere. Yeah. So some of you might have the same ability to go back and ask some of those players. Thanks. Number 4, and this is the last one. How do you define success? And of course, all of us define success probably in a little bit different variations and ways. And I think that's important to have your own little spin on it. I think there's a lot involved in this question, and it's not very simplistic. For me, for example, I do feel strongly that wins and losses are play a huge part in a role in a meeting and have merit in someone's success. I don't think it's the ultimate definition, your wins and your losses, but I do think it plays a part. Also, I think for me, personally, that's one of the reasons why I really like to coach youth, especially the younger age groups, because you can see such quick transition in some of the skills that you're training with those kids, and some of them can develop quickly, and to be able to watch that and see that individually with some of the activities that you guys give them, or tactically as a group, I think that's pretty cool. When you walk out to the field and something you actually work on actually works, that's pretty awesome. You might not win the game, but actually it's a big win as far as the coach goes. Like I said earlier when I was talking about Brian, it took me 4 practices to finally get that practice to work, and it felt really good. I mean, I was pretty pumped. I pretty much stripped all the poles and the cones and everything away, but once it finally worked, I felt good. And then at the next game, I actually saw some of that happen and transpire, so that was pretty cool. So that's definitely something for me. However, that's like maybe one of the top ones. However, now that I've gotten older, and yes, I am quite older now, just reached the 50-year milestone, I love a couple of these things that I help define my success. 1A, players I've coached pick up the craft. So the idea for me is that whenever I have a guy or girl that I've coached and then I see them coaching, that to me is 1A for me. I think it's just amazing to be able to say that a guy or girl that I coach is actually coaching, and then be able to walk by their field and see them at a practice or see them at a game. That's pretty cool, and it kind of gets me emotionally just to be able to have that opportunity, to be very fortunate that I'm as old as I am now to say that that's happened on a pretty regular basis throughout this club is pretty cool. And then the next one, 1B, is actually, really close. If they're not coaching, then seeing those players that I've coached and their success. So a couple that jump off the page for me that really stand out. I had a couple guys that I coached for a while back that were both in the club, and then they also did high school soccer that had some really tough times and went through rehab, and they were able to bounce back through it. And those guys, to me, that's just so awesome to be able to see that, and they're doing well. Another one was this guy named David Fung. Maybe you remember it. It was how many years ago it was. There was I think it was the 2016 flood, and the car went into the water and it was being submerged. He got out of his car, ran, dove in, swam in, pulled the kids out. David Fung used to play for the soccer club as well, and I was fortunate to coach him, so that was pretty cool to see him on TV. And then most recently, I had Stephen Vick, who played for the club. He passed his bar, and he also recently got married and invited me to the wedding, which was pretty cool. And it was a pretty awesome wedding, and actually Drew Nyman was one of the guys that stood in the wedding. So those to me really stand out. And then the kind of creepy ones at times are when kids that I coached, their kids are in the same daycare as my kid. That's almost true. So that's kind of weird when you see them when you go to school. And you're like, man, I coached you. That's great. And your kid's a little bit older than mine. I'm in butterflies and he's in frogs. That's cool. So it's kind of interesting, but it's great to see him. And so whenever I see him and I go to Mother's Day out and see them, we get to reminisce about soccer. It's all we ever talk about. So that's pretty cool to be able to reflect on things like that. So, so those are the 4 little questions that I think you can, you get to work on and help you define how you coach. Sorry, one second. It's here. Okay, so going forward. Okay, so now we have your cards. All right, so on your cards, you have an extra card. So if you could do me a favor, can you write down, because I think everybody does activities. Sorry to stall a little bit. I think everybody does activities with their teams, and trust me, I'd love to do hear about your activities that you do to help with team bonding. If you could write down 3 things on your card about you that are not commonly known, and then write your name on the flip side of it. So like Stanley, write down 3 things, and then on the other side. Yeah. And then I'm gonna take then you're gonna turn your card into me, and then I'm gonna say it out loud, and then we're all gonna try to figure out who that person is. Just in general, about you. Just 3 things not commonly known. I know what you could put down that's probably not commonly known, but I know, so it doesn't count.
I'm gonna put what you're thinking.
You are?
Yeah.
Do it.
You'll feel a lot better if I do.
I do, because I really want to use that one. I like it. So there's all these little team bonding things that you can do. There's some others, and if you have some, please let us know. But these are things that we do with our teams. Another one is, an interviewer and an interviewee, I guess you could say. So basically, Kevin and I, we get, and all the stuff you can do in the span of like 10 minutes of practice, or maybe 5. Kevin and I, we're paired up, we're partnered up, and I've got 1 minute to interview Kevin, find out some facts about him, and then time's up, then I gotta stand up in front of the group, and I've got to just kind of talk about Kevin and what I learned from him, and then you kind of reverse the order and give that person an opportunity. You have, as you're writing, keep going. 2 truths and a lie. Caleb Bush is excellent at that. He stopped by our practice one day and did some killer 2 truths and a lie. It was fantastic. I think he got stumped every single girl there. Congratulations. And so basically what you do is you have one of your players stand up in the front and they give 2 things about themselves that are truth, of course, and then 1 little fictitious lie, and then the group tries to figure out which one is the lie. So that's another good one. Yeah. That's the 4 questions. Sorry? I mean, I don't know if there's any others that you guys use out there. There's another really good one that we use quite a bit with all my teams. And I was going to demonstrate that in a little bit. It's called Spotlight. Yeah, write your name in that. Spotlight is probably, undoubtedly, for me, one of the best ones I've ever used. And I'll explain that one in a little bit if you haven't done it before. Bring it in. Yeah, because I'm gonna play the game.
I think Kevin's cheated on me.
I'm cheating right now. So 2 truths and a lie, right?
No. Just 3 things about yourself that aren't commonly known. Hopefully you write legibly so I can see it. And then I'll call them out.
I wrote all 3 of mine about markers.
That's good. Wow, that's a pretty penmanship. I'm gonna use that one.
That's mine.
That's
Excellent.
excellent.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
There's at least 2 in Mexico.
Dude, what the? Boy, that is gonna be tough. So as you know, these are just great ways for your team to get to know each other. We had a situation where
I bet there would be 18.
Thank you.
Still a chance.
So we were doing one, and I'll let you know that it's kind of interesting when you start to learn through these games about your kids. And one of them really struck home recently. I think I'm going to share it. Whatever. So we were doing the two truths and a lie, and for the most part, it's it's fun little stuff and nothing too serious. But there was one I had recently, and it's a tough one. But one of her truths was that she'd been stabbed, and so that was really, and all the kids were like, "Wow, that's damn!" I was like dropping the mic on the activity.
Like, so try me.
Come near one more time.
Yes.
Two tricks and a lie. I will stab you.
All right, so can I start? Oh.
I know Richard's I used to be
We're about to find out something about Richard.
I bought these cards extra large for a reason. Thanks, potatoes. Kovac, you got your card?
Yeah, I'm right.
All right. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have time to go through all of them because I know Maline's dying.
This one just says, I have a big toe named Toby.
I know who that is.
Come on, Caleb. It's wrong.
Sorry, my old soccer coach taught me how to make jokes.
Is that how it works?
It was
In
TS.
high school, I had to pull my toe out a lot.
It was TS, that's what called me.
Good? Gonna start? Shut your mouth. Comments. Just chill. You're good. You're good. I'm gonna shuffle.
He's going through a very hard time. He doesn't know. He's trying to
Alright,
He's
here
trying
we
to
go.
figure himself out.
Alright, so here we go. I'm gonna read it. I'll read it out loud, and then we can kind of guess who you think the person is. Of course, it's not Kovacs because it's
He's
Hurry up.
just put two down.
Right.
It's two truths and two lies. Two truths, two lies.
Alright, here we go. Let's see here.
Kovacs.
It's belief.
I enjoy classical music. I used to teach social studies. I used to draw cartoons.
That's Richard.
It's got to be TS, Stash.
No, that's Richard.
That's rich.
Yeah. TS? I vote for TS.
That's Richard.
My choice. TS. It comes down to TS. Is there anyone else? TS. Who? Brian. All right, so it comes down to TS, Brian, and Richard. All right, let's raise our hand if we think it's Brian.
Read it again?
Yeah, I'll go.
I'm sorry, hold on a second. I enjoy classical music. I used to teach social studies. I used to draw cartoons. I hope I read that right. All right, so we got Brian, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, what? Man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 votes. And who thinks it's TS? Who thinks it's Richard? 1, 2, 3, 4. The last 4 are the winner.
You told me you were supposed to do on Monday.
Cheater! I don't like to drive. I don't like dogs. I don't like sweets.
You're a blasted party.
Is it? Yeah.
All things someone doesn't like.
Bro, that's Brian. That is so Brian.
Brian?
Absolutely. No bigger stick up his ass.
I don't like to drive. I don't like dogs. I don't like sweets.
3 things you don't like. That's Brian.
Alex.
So we got.
Alex hates dogs.
Mateus. My vote's on Mateus.
So we have. It's down to 2.
That's
It's
Brian.
Alex.
And Alex?
Yeah.
I'll go with
Alex hates dogs.
Alex hates dogs.
Yeah.
That's rough. All right. What a job. If you think it's Alex, raise your hand.
very common. That's why everyone else is
Seven. Jeez, popular. Do you think it's Mateus? Raise your hand.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like you guys. I know
This is Stanley. This is Stanley.
No, I didn't say him. Her.
Rehab.
If you think it's Reham. No one. All right. It was Mateus, by the way.
Yeah.
Mateus.
Hold up, you told me you were looking for a dope the other day.
Hold on, he's like, oh, look, I don't like dogs.
I thought you were looking at a dog.
He's looking for
He's
a
looking for a dog.
Here was your $500.
I would have understood he said, I don't drink. I like that.
All right, here we go. I have 5 grandparents and have had more birthdays than one of them. I have 2 fake teeth. I now know how to do CPR. And a bonus one, I can't count.
Caleb.
Thomas.
Kevin.
Thomas. Okay.
That's helps. Read that again.
Caleb.
Read that again.
Caleb and
Oh,
Thomas.
that's helps. That's helps.
And Kevin.
That's helps. That's helps. I'm telling you.
Kevin. That's what it says. I have 5 grandparents and have had more birthdays than one of them. If I'm reading this correctly. So our choices are Kevin, Kobetz, and Caleb. All right, Kevin. Who thinks it's Kevin? 1, 2. If we think it's wrong. Who thinks it's Caleb? Who thinks it's Caleb? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And who thinks it's Kobetz? Huh. It's definitely Caleb. All right, we'll do one more.
Oh, I'm back.
Let's see. I'm
I know that you have money.
gonna do one I can actually see. That can see. It does. I spend a lot of my free time outdoors / out hunting.
All of us.
I detest working out / running. I am Marvin Smith's nephew.
After Bueno.
Is it Michael?
I'm sorry? Yeah. You got it. All right, so I thank you for doing that. I know I'm just running out of short of time, but I just wanted to give you another way to kind of get with your kids and get with your teams. So that's a really good way. The 2 truths and a lie is another way. And Spotlight is probably my most favorite one to do. So basically what you do is, and you can do it before a game. I usually have done it a couple different ways. Sometimes we do it before a game and it really inspires and pumps up that one particular person. And it gets the whole group involved and giving special accolades toward that person. So I think it really is a good bonding activity. And sometimes we do it in practices. It just kind of depends on how you want to do it. So basically what would happen in Spotlight is you would take a player and then everyone would go around the group and say things about that player. In particular, very kind things about that player. I'm sorry? Yeah, and the younger they are, the more simplistic. Yeah, well, the younger they are, the more simplistic it gets. And then the older they get, of course, the more sophisticated it gets. You'd be amazed, especially when you do it in high school, some of the things that these guys, believe it or not, will say. Needless to say, on the girls' side, it's over the top. But on the boys' side, it's a hell of a way to bond your guys together. I find it really brings the group tighter, and everyone has an opportunity to learn a little bit about those guys on your team. And at the same time, it gives everyone an opportunity to instill life, I guess you could say, and really give them a lot of, it's a key word I'm looking for their TS. Help me. Inspiration, I guess you could say. Okay. Are there any activities, and I'm just sharing that information out there, are there any other activities that you guys might do with your groups that you feel help your team to come together, help inspire those kids to play, that you guys have, that you work with, that you've done before in the past, that you could recommend to the group? give you another one then. All right, so something else that I've kind of worked with before, and I didn't intentionally do this in the beginning, but after kind of working with TS on these type of activities, I started doing it on a regular basis. I think it's really cool if you can take the opportunity to meet with your kids 1v1, but it's not like you intentionally do it. But for example, like if tonight we were finishing our session, and you know, one of the girls or one of the guys is kind of helping out a little bit, collect the soccer balls, and then maybe you just go with them to finish everything up. And as you're with that person and you're finishing everything up, you have the opportunity to ask them about their life and what's going on inside their life and outside of the actual soccer field itself. And I think that gives you a better connection and also helps you learn more about them, and that grows the bond, I think, between the player and the coach. Yes?
I've done one after games, specifically like after a tournament or maybe a really good win or it's been a tough weekend or something like that, depending on the team. Before we actually start training, they all get in a circle and we have a ball, and then you just throw the ball out to somebody saying what they did well that weekend, instead of just saying, hey, you did a good job, what part of the game where you did well at.
So I would get it and I'd throw it to you.
Yeah,
and then
I start with the ball and I was like, hey Chris, you played really well in that position this weekend, you did this and that, and then I would toss you the ball, and then you would throw it to somebody else and say their name as well as you went.
That's a good one. Is that this weekend? It's awesome. Anyone else? I mean, share the ideas, because to me this is the best part of us coming together. I never have done that before, and that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to use that one. Yes.
I don't know. Have you done the hot box?
I know it.
You put a heater in a closet. You blindfold your teammates. And then you play the doors. This is the end on the circle.
No.
And then you just leave them there, and you come back the next day and see they're still there.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be tough.
So I'm just having a flashback. My bad.
So you had some rough.
I was still
rough
going
time.
off the first question about what people don't know about.
Oh, I didn't get to yours. Thank you.
Yes, it does.
Any others?
More Pink Floyd.
So I guess to kind of summarize it and get it wrapped up a little bit is I know a lot of us, we spend a lot of time, we're very meticulous with our practice plan and what we write out and what we want our kids and teams to accomplish. And we do this all the time. I think it's just as important to write out how we can do bonding things and activities like we just kind of talked about and experienced. I think it's huge for your team, and it will allow them not only to grow, but it's going to take them to another level I think that your team has never been to before. These activities are fantastic, and if you can try to implement them, but you have to be very intentional. It's hard. I mean, this fall for me, it was really tough to intentionally put some of these things in because of the craziness with our schedules, from the hurricane to coming out here and not knowing if you're going to practice. You're only here for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And so then when you finally get an opportunity to practice, you're like, damn it, I don't have time to do anything else. I got to practice. I got to get my X's and O's done. I got to get these guys ready, or these girls ready to tactically be prepared for the game. But believe it or not, this is just as important. And it will go a really, really long way to strengthening your bond with your players and your team, and also your team coming together. And I think you're going to see huge dividends out of it. To kind of think about that a little bit more and take it to the next step is, you know, one second, I had it right here. Let me get my glasses to kind of lead it off. I can't say it as well as this, so I'll go ahead and read it out. What stories will others tell about you? What will they remember and share about you? For the better or worse, those stories will define you and the mark that you leave. Are you leaving a quick impression or a lasting imprint? You don't live forever, but the marks and the ripple effects of our everyday choices will. Be intentional, be purposeful, be generous. So I couldn't say it any better. I found that in preparing for this. So that to me kind of wraps up what I've been trying to talk about today, and couldn't have been said any better. So I don't even know who said it, but they did a really good job. So hopefully this helped, and hopefully some of this information you can take back to your team. And if you ever want help in this area, and this an activity that you want to do with your group, in particular Spotlight, I've had a little bit of practice with it. Just call me over and I'll help out. And if you really want someone really good with that kind of stuff, that's way better than I am, you can always ask T.S. Noble. He's fantastic at this type of activities with your team. So thanks for your time, and I hope you got something out of it.